Want to know the difference between just owning a property and creating true wealth? Multifamily rentals might be the key you've been missing. I've seen investors focus on cash flow and overlook the bigger picture, building lasting equity and multiplying wealth year after year. If you understand concepts like cap rates and how multifamily properties create dual streams of cash flow and equity, you can change your financial future. But if you ignore these strategies, you'll keep chasing properties that leave you cash poor and equity starved. But if you master these concepts, you'll unlock wealth that compounds year after year. So let's talk about cash flow versus true profit. In a previous episode, we talked about how cash flow, how properties might provide on a single family home $100 to $200 per month in a positive cash flow situation. For example, $200 a month is $2,400 per year. And at first glance, I've always said this is a little unimpressive. I mean, $2,400, you could work a part-time job and earn you more, even per month. So why do we invest in single-family homes? Because cash flow, as I've said, is only part of the story. Now, I've said before, true profit is a combination of cash flow, principal reduction, and market appreciation. Let's review that again. $2,400 of cash flow annually. Let's say a principal pay down on a $225,000 mortgage might be $7,000 in year one. And appreciation, assuming of even a modest 7% increase on a $300,000 property, that's $21,000. You add up those things, $2,400, $7,000, $21,000, and your total appreciation in year one is $30,400. Over 3 years, that adds up to $90,000. So when you talk about accessing your wealth, while you don't see this profit immediately, it's very real. And then when you refinance, that's where you're able to take this money out tax-free. So banks may let you refinance, access the increased equity. When you sell it, the market can also reward you by paying the full appreciated value. And that's why successful investors think beyond monthly cash flow and plan for both short-term and long-term gains. Now, what I've always said, and I see this time and time again in our property management company, is investors think too much about cash flow. They worry about being negative. They worry about the $1,000 furnace repair, the $1,500 hot water tank repair. And while those things are awful and they do kill your cash flow, I'm not going to lie about that. Think about that for a second. Okay, so you get a midnight phone call. It's Friday night. You have to call your plumber. The hot water tank is spraying water all over the place, literally going down the drain. You get them out there. It's $2,000. Devastating, right? Because your $2,400 cash flow is now gone. However, when you look at the $30,000 that you gained in profit for that year minus $2,000, it's actually not that bad. I actually have investors that want to sell the property because a hot water tank went, or even worse, a $5,000 furnace, a $4,000 air conditioner. Again, when you look at those things, and yes, you have to replace them, it hurts. $7,000 roof. However, you could argue that by having that equipment, that roof, the new things there, when you refinance, when you sell the property, you're going to gain a portion of that back. Okay, so I've always said again, don't worry about the cash flow, worry about the true profit. That's why we invest in smaller single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes. But let's talk about multifamily, because that seems to be the holy grail. That's what everybody wants, and it's based on a cap rate. So let's define it. A cap rate stands for capitalization rate, okay, CAP, a key metric, okay? So this is used to evaluate the profitability of a multifamily rental property. The formula is cap rate, so equals net operating income divided by property value times 100. I know it's difficult if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and if you're on YouTube, we'll put up a graphic there. But let's just give an example. If your property generates $70,000 in NOI, net operating income, and is valued at $1 million, okay, $1 million, 70,000 divided by $1 million equals 0.07 or a 7% cap rate. Now, when you're talking about net operating income, NOI, this is your rental property's income after operating expenses, but before debt payments. So take your total rent, okay, gross rental, minus operating expenses. Those could be property management costs, garbage rental, garbage removal, utility bills for common areas, anything that you can think of. Parking lots, snow removal, okay? Operating expenses, OPEX. Gross rental income could include all your rental payments, additional revenue like parking fees, coin-operated laundry, operating expenses, like I said, property taxes also in there. I talked about maintenance and repairs. Insurance, that's a big one. And again, utilities. So when you have your NOI and you're figuring all of this out, what does a cap rate tell you? Well, a high cap rate, typically like even 8% or higher, is typically found in riskier markets with lower property values, but potentially higher returns. Okay, so you're talking maybe C-class properties, properties in sketchier neighborhoods, maybe markets where, you know, the returns aren't that great in terms of property value, but that's when you might be able to get more cash flow. A low cap rate, let's say around the 4 to 6%, indicates a more stable property, maybe a more stable market, often in high demand areas, okay? Investors often accept lower cap rates for better long-term appreciation. The cap rate helps you compare similar assets, but it shouldn't be your only metric since it doesn't factor in debt, future improvements, or market shifts. So when we talk about cap rates, where do you find out what the cap rate is for your area? What I like to use, and this is kind of an industry standard, is to look at a lot of the big multifamily firms that publish their market reports, you know, usually quarterly, even annually, and their average cap rates for every market in your area. Again, example here in Canada, you know, something that I use is the Collier's report. You know, and I'll look at it because I'm in Winnipeg, Canada, and I'll look what the average cap rate is. And let's say that the average cap rate is 6% or 5.5%. You can apply that cap rate at that time when you're evaluating what you should be paying for an actual asset. So when you're doing the underwriting on an apartment block, you're basically going to ask for the pro forma. They're going to give you the net operating income. Now you're going to have to tease out some things in there because a lot of them aren't that accurate. Maybe they forgot to put in the property taxes. So just make sure that you're putting into a spreadsheet, you're doing your underwriting properly. Okay? You want to make sure that the net operating income is as accurate as you can make it. Then you apply the region's cap rate, and that'll tell you what the purchase price should be, or basically what it's worth. So for example, you could have a building that is, I don't know, let's say the owner's asking 2.5 million. But when you apply their pro forma and their net operating income to the current cap rate, maybe it's not 2.5, maybe it's 2.2. So therefore they're overvaluing their building. You go in and you determine then, and that's where the real value comes in, that you can do some renovations, maybe the rents are artificially low. And as the new owner, you're going to come in and you can imagine now, as soon as you increase your net operating income, multiplied by that cap rate, and then you get increased value. Now, I'm going to give you an example. There is an apartment block that I am purchasing right now, and it's 22 units. And right now, the purchase price, or rather, so we did an appraisal, 22 unit, 3-story walk up in a decent area of town, older building, 1950s, 1960s construction. And the as is value on the appraisal is $2.3 million. Okay. The as improved, so this is where I am telling the appraiser and the appraisal company, I'm going to be doing these renovations. We're going to be changing out the windows, we're going to change the roof, we're going to put on new suite doors, and we're going to convert over from an old boiler to electric baseboard heat. Let's say that I'm spending $500,000 on these renovations, and then in Manitoba, there are, and you could probably do this in your state or province, if you're allowed to increase the rent, then you're going to do so. And so our rents are at this really, really low, like $850. And then we should be able to get $1,100. If we're able to get that up to $1,100, then the as improved rate, the as improved value is going to be 3.1. So we're going from 2.3 to 3.1. Spending, let's say $500,000. So you can see there, you spend 500, and we're going to get 700 out of this. Now, those numbers aren't that accurate. Actually, it's more like $4 million by spending 700,000. So I'm still evaluating, and that's what, I don't want to call it fun, but it actually is fun to try to choose which improvements are going to give you the best bang for your buck, what's going to, you don't want to spend as much, but you want to spend the minimum amount. Obviously, extend the economic lifespan of that asset, but then make sure that you're doing renovations that are going to maximize the amount of rent you can get, because that is going to push your NOI. And then when you multiply it by the cap rate, then you're going to be able to get that value. You're going to be able to then do a refi and a takeout, and depending how you finance this purchase, maybe you're using it through capital investors or a syndication, that's where you're going to get that lift because of the rents. Be fiscally responsible with the types of renovations you're going to do, and then that refi, that takeout, is going to pay back your investors or even yourself. Now, the cap rate helps you compare similar assets, but it shouldn't be your only metric, since it doesn't factor in debt, future improvements, or market shifts. Let's talk about multifamily properties, okay? Equity and cash flow equals true wealth. Multifamily rental properties offer a balance of equity growth, but also steady cash flow. And we're not talking about $2,400 a year with $150 to $200 like we said with a single family home. Each unit in that building generates rental income, diversifying your risk of vacancies. Your cash flow can then be reinvested to cover expenses, fund property upgrades, or fuel further investments. Why are multifamily rentals superior for long-term wealth? And this is really what I've been fighting with myself for 25 years. I've always, to be completely transparent and honest, kind of resisted against the multifamily. I mean, there are things, and I'm going to go through there, pest control, or if a roof goes, now you have a $200,000 bill as opposed to a $7,000 bill on a single family home. If the furnace goes in a single family, you've got, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 maybe. If a boiler goes in a large or even a small apartment block, you're still talking $150,000 to $200,000. So bigger building, bigger problems, bigger expense. However, let's talk about some of the advantages, meaning consistent income streams. So even if one unit is vacant, so if you have one unit vacant in a house, you don't have anything coming in. But if you have a unit vacant in an apartment block, the other units continue generating revenue. And with economies of scale, now you have the shared costs. So I talked about, how devastating it would be when you have a boiler that goes or a roof that goes with a multifamily apartment block, but you actually have lower expenses per unit when you have maintenance and management for that entire block, because you have maybe a plumber can go there and they can service 4 units. It's just, that overall that increases your net profit, which of course increases your NOI and then your property values. Now, financing. Okay, lenders often view multifamily properties as safer investments due to their multiple income streams. There is significant depreciation. Multifamily properties appreciate not just based on market trends, but like I said, improvements to operations and income through that cap rate. And you can do strategic valuations using cap rates. So for example, when you're buying a multifamily property, you can look at both the cap rate and the potential income growth. You can improve net income by, like I said, increasing rents, reducing expenses. So let's say that we talked about going from a low efficiency, really old boiler that's 50, 60 years old, asbestos piping, that type of thing. And you go with a high efficiency boiler and maybe you reduce your gas heating costs by 50%. Well, every dollar then goes back into your net operating income that increases. I guess the expense for that renovation, that replacement of that boiler actually increases your property value, because under the cap rate model, you're going to be able to get that. So example, if you raise your net income from $70,000 to $80,000, the property that's valued at a 7% cap rate rises from $1 million to approximately $1.14 million. So cash flow versus true profit. Cash flow is important, but it shouldn't be, your only measure of success. Let's consider additional wealth building components. Principal reduction, tenants pay down your mortgage over time, appreciation. We talked about this, that they're going to be able to, increase significantly in value based on those market conditions. We have to talk about tax benefits. That's a podcast all into itself, but you have depreciation, you have other tax deductions that can further enhance your profitability. An example comparison, let's say you have annual cash flow of $2,400, like I said, $7,000 principal pay down, property appreciation of a $300,000 property at $21,000, and your wealth gain is $30,000, $30,400 to be exact. Over 10 years, this cumulative wealth building strategy can result in over $300,000 largely funded by your tenants. But like I said, I am learning with you. I think my story, everybody knows that. I built my rental portfolio to 75 doors, 43 buildings while working full time over a period of 10 years, but they were all small duplexes, triplexes, single family homes. And when I think about that, 43 buildings, I had 43 roofs, I had 43 furnaces, things like that. And I always thought that it was just better. I thought I felt safer. But what I wasn't realizing is, were they truly cash flowing assets? And here's you can comment below depending on, let me know what you think. Is a house that cash flows $200 a month considered a cash flowing asset? If we were to ask Robert Kiyosaki, who really stresses that you should only be investing in cash flowing assets, is a single family home a cash flowing asset? There's a lot of people out there that would argue it's not. A true cash flowing asset can only be a larger multifamily dwelling, a larger multifamily property, a large, building, because the cash flow that we're talking about there is in the thousands per month. And when you are able to take that, you can live off of some of that cash flow. You can't live off $200 from a single family home. Maybe you can get that to 20, 30 houses and you can multiply that, but still it's not the same thing as a multifamily dwelling. So let's summarize. We broke down today how cap rates, cash flow, and equity growth come together to build real wealth with multifamily properties. The cash flow might get you by in the short term, but long-term wealth is truly built on the foundation of those three things: equity appreciation and tenant-funded principal reduction. So if you want to dive deeper into these strategies, join our My First Keys community, where we guide investors from their first deal to long-term portfolio success. We're offering a free 6-week trial with no credit card required. Just click the link in the show notes below to learn more, and we'll see you there.